All right, we are officially live with the Pendance Midnight Block. We're gonna go clockwise with everything. We're gonna start in the afternoon over in Australia with Alan King, who made Wild Will. Then we're gonna go down to Texas, Austin, Texas, one of my favorite places on earth, with Dan Rep, who is the co-director of Cutter, and then Adnan Sadiq, who's in Columbus. Is it Columbus, Ohio?
Yeah, that's correct.
Columbus, Ohio, and he made the last short in the blog, Last and First Woman. Um, Incredible films. Let's talk about them. So, thematically, the way that you all made these films, I think, is super interesting. Let's start with Alan on that one because you made this film pretty much how you're sitting right now.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Pretty much made it in my kitchen by myself, did everything myself. I've listened in on a couple of the other Q&As about restrictions and working with restrictions and how they can be both, your enemy and your best friend as a filmmaker. And I sort of took that to the extreme. So I found different ways of telling the narrative because I was restricted in how I could be a storyteller. So obviously I had no cameraman, just pointed the camera at me. So it was obviously pretty stagnant. So the audio came into play in driving the narrative of the film. We didn't see any other actors or characters because they weren't on set. So all the post-production was audio coming in at the end. So it was a different way to tell the story, but I think I found out some really interesting ways to sort of mix up my storytelling, and hopefully the audience found something that was a bit different and was able to sort of find something a bit more stimulating in it as well. So yeah, it was all shot in my apartment.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely incredible how much you've left to the imagination. In an age where so little is left to the imagination. We've been harping about this all weekend. I swear it's become a recurring theme in these Q&As. It's just a sort of pissed offness that I have towards spoon feeding the audience, and there's just so much left to interpretation. Quite a few people had this very visceral response to Wild Will, which they couldn't define why it was so uncomfortable to watch. They just knew that while they were watching it, that their stomach started to turn at some point. And we're gonna get into how you pull that off. Absolutely, I'm being completely sincere. Dan, you made Cutter. Now, are you a horror movie fan?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
What's your big beef with horror films? Do you have a beef with horror films? Some horror films?
Well, I mean, it's always been hard to be a horror film fan because the ratio of good to bad. You watch 10, 9 bad movies to get your one gem. So that wasn't the case in this block. But shorts, I think, are different than features. But no, my big thing with horror was, and Lindsay and I talked about it. We actually were in another shorts block for another festival that might be happening right now in Austin. But anyway, their midnight block, it's not Pendance. Their midnight block, there was a whole bunch of just silly, they're good, but silly horror stuff, nothing really scary. And the one scary thing was like a trailer, basically. And Lindsay and I have been talking about doing something where, if someone died in it, you actually cared. And then we took on, self-harm, which was a big task. But yeah, that's where it all started.
It's interesting you mentioned that. Last year we had Jonathan Quartas, who had made the feature film "My Heart Can't Beat Until You Tell It to," and incredible film. And I made this comment about smart horror, and he was very, very ticked off that I said smart horror because he's like, the implication there, it's like baked in that you're saying that horror is generally stupid, and I think that that's a sort of trope that filmmakers sometimes have to get over. We're making horror. It's like, no. This is not that type of horror. There's a story here. I think we probably need to move away from that because you're right. There's an overprevalence of just slasher crap, which is just meant to shock, but it's not meant to disturb. right? It's like there is something different about Wild Will behind Cutter specifically, um, that I think it stays with you. It's supposed to. You're not supposed to forget about it. You're not supposed to be like able to just check out of it and be like, oh, it was a thrill ride. No, it actually did something to you, and it's different than just a little bit of blood and a little bit of gore. There's something actually disturbing about it, and I think that that's maybe what people refer to as smart horror. But I think you've hit it with Cutter, an incredible short. Adnan, you did not make a horror film.
I did not.
What are you doing here? What are you? we put you in Midnight because we do lump horror and sci-fi together in a way, because there is this, just as we in the story of Everything Block, we lump short docs and animation together. We just think that they make good bedfellows, and I think your film, as much as it's not horror, I sense horror themes throughout. There is a sense of mystery and the unknown. It's the second longest film in Pendance history. Shorts, second longest. The longest was Bears on Pine Ridge last year. Let's talk about how you made it, because we've chatted very briefly yesterday during our meet and greet about how you made it, and I'm just astounded by the production value and everything. But let's talk about the story. What came, like, where did the story of this girl who's just so committed to something, is it personal? Where does it come from?
I think it was kind of born out of my own journey in STEM, attending Ohio State. And at the end of my career in undergrad, I kind of had this biology degree, and it was very much just a piece of paper to me. And my relationship with it was so negative because, I'm still paying off the loans for that. So the seed, I guess, started off from just an apathetic relationship with the post-secondary curriculum. And then it kind of snowballed where I wanted to introduce thematic elements of feminism and some racism and xenophobia that occurs, and just like the idea that there is tenure and just very old guard way of the way the curriculum is handled, and how it doesn't really nurture passion. And I think that was like the real core of what I wanted to approach. And I really wanted to approach it from like a perspective where you do have this very passionate person, and they're not really able to execute the semantics of like the modern curriculum. And I wanted to contrast that with some dispassionate people that are very excellent in the curriculum. And in that way, I think I was projecting myself where I wasn't necessarily passionate about my major, but I did well, and I knew people who were genuinely passionate that did not. So I thought that said a lot to me as an artist, and I guess that's where the story came from.
That's brilliant. But then how do you merge the sci-fi element of it? Like, where does that come from? Because this is obviously some sort of overlap there of merging of two ideas, which is the intersection of those two is usually where some of the most interesting stuff happens.
Yeah, I think the idea of the inciting incident kind of came as a spark to me, because I think there are a lot of inciting incidents in science that aren't given much thought. I was just basically tracking my whole idea of what industry do you see like the most passionate people that aren't really um, allowed to get like a kickstart aside from film. And it really was kind of that whole STEM background. And I think like science fiction, I think like especially in my movie, it's kind of rooted in there are artistic elements to it, but it's kind of rooted in this reality of there's a female scientist named in the movie, and she actually discovered the actual inciting incident, and she wasn't given credit for the next 3 or 4 years. And I think for me, artistically, I was looking at movies like Under the Skin, and more abstract horror films, maybe even Suspiria was thrown in there, something a little bit more avant-garde. I think the stylistic elements came from the sci-fi genre, and then story-wise, I think we wanted to keep it relatively rooted in science, with liberties taken for the sake of the plot.
Fascinating. So anyone who hasn't, gone to check out these films and you're watching this now, let this be the glowing endorsement. These fantastic Q&As. Let this, Alan. I'm sure you've seen this film with a live audience. What are you hoping for? Like, I'm wondering. I'm kind of curious. Like, do you sit in the theater? Do you sit outside the theater? Do you listen? Do you feel it? What are you hoping for?
I'm hoping to engage the audience first and foremost. And there's a great scene in Hitchcock where he goes outside of the cinema, and I don't know if any of you guys have seen that film Hitchcock with Anthony Hopkins, and they're playing Psycho, and he locks everyone into the theater, and they're playing Psycho, and he's outside the cinema and he's listening to the responses as the shower scene's taking place, and he's like a conductor conducting the orchestra or the audience, and they're rising up and rising down. And I suppose you're just looking for those moments just to hit. And I do enjoy that moment when there is that jump scare, because it's always a joy to see that work when the audience sort of get that and respond to that. But yeah, each audience is different. I haven't unfortunately been able to see it in a lot of live settings because of COVID. I haven't been able to go to a lot of festivals, but the ones I have seen it at, yeah, I've really enjoyed those moments where the audience has responded like that to it. So yeah, it's been amazing. But yeah, I think that it's always interesting when you are in a live setting how an audience responds, and I think you just hear it. You can close your eyes and just hear the response. So it's always good. Yeah, you don't really need to see it.
Absolutely, I think a lot of filmmakers who attend their screenings, they see with their ears. They're just feeling it. I've seen so many filmmakers at Pendance come, and they're backstage, they're right outside the theater, they're just listening at the door, and they're waiting for those moments, so that funny moment worked, or that. And I think films, the best films in the world are about moments. I think, and I think all three of these films have moments, like moments that I don't think as a programmer I will ever be able to forget. Like if someone mentions Wild Will to me in 2052, I'll be like, yep, that moment, that stuck with me. Dan, there's a moment in your film, we're not going to ruin it, but you build to it. So consciously, how do you, first of all, Cutter, it starts in a very unnerving place. Okay, the first frame. There are people who watch the first frame. They're like, nah, can't do this. This is too much, right? What went into the decision to start there, and to end where you ended?
Well, first off, we went through. Writing the script alone, me and Lindsay spent a year and 22 drafts of the script, mainly because we were dealing with self-harm and we did not want to misrepresent it or make exploit it just for to make a scary horror movie. We wanted to actually make a horror movie that'll make people talk about, start conversations about it, because it's something that's not talked about enough, and it's scarily more common than people think. So, but from the beginning, the opening shot, we kind of decided on that because we don't want to trick people that this is a mom and daughter movie that's, not going to go to bad places. So the easiest trigger warning is making your first shot, just as unsettling as you can. And actually, the one thing with our first shot, we needed a ghost. One thing that we want to fix if we do make a feature is the suicide. In actuality, a lot of cutting, people who self-harm are actually not suicidal. That's one kind of thing we had to give in for that opening shot was we needed a ghost, and to explain her in 15 minutes was really hard. So we just had the suicide. But anyway, but then to get to the end, we faced it in two ways. One was using the mother as being a monster and the bad guy in some scenes, but then also having this actual monster in the background that's kind of orchestrating everything. So, but yeah, what was key was getting the mother and daughter relationship. And it's funny, the most terrifying thing for me is when the mother takes the daughter's clothes off to see if she's cutting, to see if there's any fresh cuts, because it's just so vulnerable having someone, even if it's your parent, like physically take your clothes off, and to be exposed like that.
No, I think you've walked a really fine line between a horror film and a very thoughtful drama, right? And then again to the point of merging intersections and things being very interesting. We're just getting comments, and so I'm just going to pop them up on the screen. Thank you, Mandy, for your comment. So, I just think that the way that you start this film, you go away from that for a bit, and there's like a quiet, but you can never forget how it started. So even though, yes, it was a trigger warning, and some people will probably leave and say, I can't deal with this, the people who stay know where you went. So that's sort of like suspense, I think, is just always there of like, oh, it's going to go right back there at some point. Something bad's about to happen. I think that's something that is a unifying theme among these three films. Something bad's about to happen. How do you do that? How do you consciously, one of the first bits of direction advice that I got as a new director in 2015 was take these moments in your film and find a way to cohesively stitch them together without losing the audience. Like find the moments of like, I want to take the audience to this point, that point, and then don't lose the tension. So Alan, the extreme close-up of the character, the lack of cuts, the lack of the other perspective. How much can you imagine having made this film any other way if you had a crew or a cast, or is it's just a perfect film the way it is?
Thanks, mate. I appreciate that. It's just the way it came together. It wasn't something that I had necessarily pre-planned. I shot components of it and put it together in the edit. So the building blocks sort of came together as it was made. So it was quite unconventional in that sense. I didn't even have a script, to be honest. I shot a scene, put it in the edit, thought, what does it need next? Shot another scene, put that in the edit. There were some things that were opportunistic that came up at the time. So the blowfly sequence, for example, that was just taking advantage of things that happened in the moment that I decided to film. So there was a blowfly that was dying on my window ledge. I filmed it, filmed the character interacting with it, and inserted that into the edit, which gave it a whole nother level of subtext. So again, that was just inserted in the edit. So the piece sort of grew organically, really. It wasn't sort of meditated in script form before the film was shot. So the laws of nature worked with me, worked with coincidence and chance to create that film. So it was sort of an organic thing that just happened. So I suppose
I was going to ask you about that. That was really impressive.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it was just by chance. So I was just sort of allowing things to happen as they came, which I think was a really wonderful experience for me. That worked out that way, and I really like to take that moving forwards. Allowing chance and things that happen on the day, and incorporating things that might fall into your lap that you hadn't scripted, and taking advantage of those and using those, because they can add a whole new level of subtext to your film that you hadn't scripted. And yeah, that's what happened, basically.
I think we bring things, whether we realize it or not, into our films spontaneously all the time. There's an actor who comes to set having had a fight with their mother, and that's part of their performance that day. right? There's all these happy accidents, and maybe that's the perfect performance. Speaking of performances, I had never heard of Nadia Alexander before Cutter, and I felt embarrassed after having never heard of her because, I mean, just having seen some of her other work now, incredible actress. Dan, how did you cast her, and where'd you find her? How'd you discover her?
So we got really lucky with her. Number one, when you have someone who's been on Netflix and done actual, has someone who has a name with a short, if you have to work there, and if your schedule works out with theirs, then they show up. But also, we got part of it is just networking at festivals like this. We had a producer in New York that saw her film Blame, that she won actually Tribeca. She won the acting award that year for that film. And my producer gave the script to her, and she liked it, and then contacted me and Lindsay, and then it just worked out. We got so lucky, and as a first-time director, having an actress with that much experience, and truly, what's crazy about her is she would do these heavy scenes. The last whole last bit, not the hospital thing, but the whole last bit with the mother and daughter. That was a whole day shoot. So it was very emotional the whole day, but she kept just like in between takes going on her phone and laughing, and I went up to her, I was like, how are you doing this? And she said that she stopped using emotion in her performances because it's hard to get out of that. So she trained her body. This is how she looks when she's sad, how she cries. So it's pretty incredible that like she's going from looking like she does when her mom, at the very last shot, and then literally on her phone laughing. So she's incredible. We got very lucky.
That must be a very rare thing, because that challenges everything I know about directing, which is to keep actors in the zone and to not be distracted and not, but that's incredible that she's able to do that. But certain people are just gifted. let's just accept that not everyone, there's somebody out there who's probably going to put up their, put a camcorder and try to make Wild Will Part 2, and I got news for you. It's probably not going to work out quite that way, but because there is an element of skill, talent, experience, vision, creativity, whatever that goes into that. And then I would like to turn it over to you to now ask a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. I think just like watching both of your films, I had like big questions, but I guess I wanted to start with something a little bit more specific. I was going to ask Dan, how did you nail the makeup on those scars? Because I thought that looked very realistic as someone who's worked at a hospital. Yeah.
So we have one big thing is I'm actually kind of a bad representation of who worked on this film, aside from helping come up with it. Over 60% of our cast and crew are female. And that was a big thing for us going into it, since it was a mother-daughter story. And we actually found an effects house that's run by Meredith Johns, and she did all of the prosthetics, and then her team came out and did the applications. But the unsung hero who did her job but never gets any recognition is our VFX person, who actually, most of it is practical, but she went in and cleaned stuff up. And like the cut on her chest in the scene that everyone squeals on or squirms on was actually much bigger and discolored and everything. So she went in and made the cut smaller so it looked like it opened up, but you can't tell. So her name's Christine Carstairs. So she's in the credits, and you can find her online. She's amazing. She's in Austin. So
wow, that's so amazing. I think like the best effects are usually like a marriage between practical and VFX some way, somehow. And then I guess like something that I know is more practical. Alan, what did you use for the fake blood?
Oh, mate, that took some work, let me tell you. And in reference to what Dan's saying, I got a newfound respect for visual effects and makeup artists after trying to do it myself. That that was an experiment and took some time. I ended up using tomato sauce, chocolate syrup, Worcestershire sauce, and the magic ingredients, maple syrup. It's all about texture, and you got to get that thickness, and you don't want that watery sort of blood. And there's two types of blood I found out. There's blood that comes from the veins and blood that comes from the arteries, arterial blood. So I wanted arterial blood. So unfortunately, I was shooting in black and white because it certainly wasn't the right color. Once it got converted to black and white, it was fine. So it had that beautiful thick texture. So I was actually very happy with my blood in the end, but it took some doing. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixture. Didn't taste too good either.
How many times did you have to apply before you got the take you wanted, or was it just like a one and done?
What was that? Sorry?
I was just asking how many times did you have to apply the fake blood in order to like execute what you wanted to do, or was it just you had to do it the one time?
No, I did a few takes. I started off being tentative and just dribbling a bit on and then a bit more. And I thought, I'll stuff this. I got the whole bowl and just put it over my head. I thought, now we're talking. That's better. Let's just go for this. So, yeah, that was the one I used, was just the whole bowl over my head and then just shot it tight. And I like, yeah, if you're going to do it, just go for it.
That's amazing. You think I'd have these bigger questions, but that was like the one that's
how'd you make the blood look that way? Yeah, this is awesome. But you know what, that's interesting, because it's like I often I veer into I want to ask people questions that they've never been asked before, and sometimes I miss the questions that people are really interested to know about. And I think that someone who I have a better understanding of Wild Will now, understanding that what you just said. So I think that that's fantastic and a really good reason why it's great to have filmmakers ask other filmmakers questions. It's cool because it's not me asking question. But here is my my question, which is like Adnan and Dan, I think there's a lot of meticulous planning that goes into it, from what you're talking about, 22 drafts, from Adnan, all of your all of just the storyboarding and the decision making behind it. Alan, it seems like your film became one thing and became another thing and became another thing, and then eventually it became an official selection at one of my favorite film festivals in the world, in Clermont-Ferrand. So at what stage of its metamorphosis did you know, oh, this is good?
Never. I'm not trying to sound falsely modest here, but I'm always very self-critical of my work. So it's lovely to hear you guys say that, and I appreciate it. But I never think that it's amazing, because I'm always picking bits that I'm like, oh shit, I wish I'd done that, or I wish I'd done this. But I'm happy with it in the sense that I felt like I'd put something together that was timed properly and the blood looked good. But I'm always critical when I watch my film, and I'm always picking bits. Oh, I wish I'd done this and that. But yeah, no, so there was never that sense that I felt it was perfect or finished. But that's just maybe most filmmakers. Another filmmaker said to me recently, you never feel your work's finished. You never feel it's complete. And I said, I have that feeling exactly. There's always something I wish I'd done or wish that I'd changed. But yeah, I suppose that feeling never came.
I think this next audience question sort of ties into what I wanted to ask you about, which is the sound design, which does so much of the heavy lifting. Cinematography, sound design, and you may not take this compliment well, but your performance, minimalistic as it is, and your fantastic job of special effects, maple syrup, that you just talked about, which is incredible. But that's I think what I was talking about is at what point in that process in post did it sort of turn into something else? And this next question here is, where did the idea of the Christmas song come from?
Yeah, I like the juxtaposition of these two police officers having a beautifully quiet Christmas night that just becomes so horrifically violent. So for me, a time of peace and love and sharing turning into a night of slaughter and murder, there was the juxtaposition between the two that I liked, that collision. And so a song of goodwill and love, Christmas Carol, meets such horrific violence. So it was just that collision that I liked, that extremity. Yeah.
I have a question for Alan.
Yeah.
I'm able to,
yeah.
We talked about subtext, and I love the film as well.
Thanks, Dan.
I was curious if there's any comment on how police approach people on the spectrum, and how they misapproach them, and someone staring at the moon. It felt like something like that, where they're talking to someone on the spectrum that just turns out to be a monster. But
yeah, well, they know this guy because he's the local dog catcher, so they know him, and he's just like, they sort of talk about whether he's taking drugs or whether he's drunk because he's had too many Christmas drinks, and it's like, no, he's a teetotaler. So what on earth's wrong with him? So it sort of leans a bit towards the fact that he's maybe a werewolf because he's looking at the moon. So I sort of hint towards that a little bit, but yeah, I never really went there, but I'm always welcome if audience bring what they want to it and read something like that into it, because I like to leave things a bit open. I don't like to sort of explain or lay it out too much, like Robert was saying. You don't want to give everything, do you? Because it's sort of like spelling it out. You want to keep some things open. Yeah.
I think this concept of juxtaposition, right? It leads very well into the concept of subversion, like subverting a genre, subverting a location, right? So in a sense, you know, if I say to an average person, you know, the things that happen in Qatar are going to happen. Now imagine the location in which they're going to happen. They probably don't imagine the apartment you shot in. That's interesting. If I described a character, Adnan, that you wrote in Last First Woman, right? They're probably not imagining a young girl, stubborn, hard-headed scientist, right? Pushing for the boundaries. So how consciously are you choosing to subvert, or is it just an extension of the things that you're curious about, that you're just almost subconsciously subverting genres because it's what you're interested in?
It was very, very intentional. I'm a big Rian Johnson fan. I love subversion, and I think that it's an element in movies that has existed since the beginning, and I think it also has this element of pushing the needle forward. The one complaint that I get from the movie, that like after people watch it, is just, oh, the actress looked too young, and I think like that going into it, we knew that would be a concern with Emmy, who was our amazing actress, and we wanted to depict that like there is this new generation of like passionate people, and it I think there's this misconception that youth is misconstrued as immaturity, and there is this new generation coming out where you do have these passionate people that care about one thing and one thing only. So as far as subversion, yeah, I think that it was very intentional when we wrote it. It was very intentional when we cast, and I suppose the ideas in the very beginning when she gets kicked out of her program, it's a lot of people would figure that would be kind of like, oh, by the end of the movie she's going to be back into the program, she's, you know, everything's going to work out. And of course, if you watch the short, it doesn't exactly work out the way you think. And I think that's accurate to life. And it was also a necessity in the script to do the same. And I think like the beauty, if I'm tooting my own horn here, the beauty in it is that like you need that failure, and like it's almost like there's this idea that if you fail, you got to pick yourself back up. But with the main character, I wanted to depict that, oh, she fails, and then she completely 180s. She chooses this new path entirely because she believes in herself to this degree. And so, yeah, to answer your question in short, the subversion was definitely a big part of the script that we wanted to depict accurately.
I think inherently makes anything more interesting to watch. I think Do Not Hesitate at Pendance is a feature that is like definition of subversion. Is a war film about, you know, what it's about. I don't want to spoil it for anyone. Dan, this location sometimes we fall into happy accidents. Sometimes we plan for things meticulously. How consciously were you making this look like my living room?
Well, a lot of it came into that we didn't think that they would have that Kathy. I don't think we ever say the mom's name, but the mom, she wouldn't have any kind of like luxurious house or anything. So we wanted to put her kind of in a generic place. Actually, it's kind of funny if you go on our on the letterbox, one of our reviews is, "Oh, it looks like an Airbnb." So, but actually, that's kind of what those apartments look like. What was sad was with the design, we actually spent a lot of time production-wise where the mom actually took everything sharp out of the house and locked it into drawers, and so a lot of the drawers and the doors have padlocks on them. But we didn't want to just like, hey, look at this. Like, look how smart we are. But then we ended up not showing it really at all. So we spent a lot of time putting padlocks on things, taking glass out of the window, anything with pictures in it. We took glass out. That's why she didn't have her bed, because the bed springs. So a lot of that though kind of went to the wayside. But we also didn't want to distract from the actual just storytelling. So, but the apartment, yeah, it was kind of a happy accident. It was just the apartment complex I lived in at the time. They had a apartment that you could rent for your, like, if your parents visit. And so we just did that.
That's super interesting. Let's talk festivals. So, Alan, I believe this is probably one of your last festivals that you'll be. Yeah, this is the swan song for you, Pendance, and we're so happy. Like, we're, technically, like, we couldn't select the film in competitions. We selected it out of competition. We're like, you know what? This film is absolutely. We wish we'd discovered it last year, so we could have selected it in competition. But God help us, because we think about our audience, and we just wanted our audience to see this film. And chances are, I don't think you played in Toronto before.
No,
exactly.
And I was stoked to bookend my festival journey with finishing at Pendance. So thanks for having me. It's been a great journey, and I couldn't think of a better festival to finish up at. So yeah.
No, it's amazing. So what's next for you, and what's next for this film?
Well, we've got we're launching on a streaming service which has just launched. It's a worldwide streaming service, but it's just launched. And Alex Proyas, who directed I, Robot, The Crow, and Dark City, he's hand-selected 60 short films and hand-selected Wild Will, which is a big compliment. And it's called Vidiverse. So that's just launched last week, and it's really reasonable subscription. I think for $38 you can watch all the shorts, and he's going to add features and shorts every month, and just keep growing it from there to support independent cinema, and all the funds go back to filmmakers. So we're launching on that. And I've got a feature film coming up called The Beast, which continues along with the sort of dark Wild Will theme, and that's about a reclusive writer who retreats to the woods and is attacked by a mythical beast. And we're not quite sure throughout the film whether the beast actually exists or whether he's inflicting these injuries upon himself and other people. The more injuries that are inflicted upon everyone and himself, the more famous he gets, and the more society seems to want to know him. So it's about society's fascination with violence, and how fame sort of perpetuates and grows with violence as well. And so I'm really looking forward. We're shooting that in early May, so that's my first feature film. So really excited. Yeah, won't be shooting that by myself, by the way, either. That's not solo.
That's congratulations, and
Thanks,
and
mate.
super well deserved. And there's something about Australian cinema with Pendance, and I think I mentioned this to you in our email correspondence.
You did.
It's incredible, the films that are coming from this country, which doesn't have a huge population. Peeps last year was our best short winner. Came from Australia. All These Creatures, one of my favorite films. Wolf Creek, probably one of my favorite features.
Yeah.
Another Aussie feature.
Yeah.
What are they putting down in the water in Australia?
I can only tell you what we're putting in the blood, mate, from my experiences. Maple syrup.
Well, as a Canadian here, I appreciate your shout out to maple syrup. Dan, well, thank you so much, Alan.
Thanks,
Dan,
Rob.
what's next for Cutter?
Well, we're currently on the third draft of our feature version. That is, it's different. We went a little different direction to focus more on the her and her friends versus her and her mom.
Yeah.
We did make a huge mistake in our first draft and try to make it like more mainstream with like more kills, and that was a horrible mistake.
Okay.
So we got back to what we knew. So there's that, and then I can't wait to do a comedy because all these guys here know if you do something serious, and then with the pandemic, it stuck with me because I had a few extra years here because we shot right before the pandemic, and then so I've been working on this cutting self-harm project for now like 4 years, and I'm ready to do something a little more light.
That's so interesting. And if I may recommend, Carlota Pereda, who made Quedita. Have you heard of this film, Piggy? Sundance 2022.
I'm sorry, which one?
It's called Piggy.
Oh yeah, yes, I saw it.
You saw it at Sundance. Nice.
Yeah.
So that film, the short version of that was at Pendance 2019, won Best Short.
Oh wow. Yeah, I saw that.
And it's like we've been so tied to that film forever, and I'm so thrilled that she's going to be coming on, and just what you're saying about adapting your short. The last time that I felt this, and I hope no Pendance film, I feel bad saying this because I feel like a Pendance Midnighter from last year is going to be like, are we chopped liver? The last time I was this like amped and just telling everyone go check out Pendance Midnight was 2019 because of Quedita, which ended up winning our Best Short. So I think there's something special in Cutter, and I think we're going to be chatting with Carlota about the adaptation of a short to a feature. She ended up using the same actress. It's an expansion of her short, and it became a feature, and it's incredible. So if you want to tune in on Sunday, definitely check that out.
Awesome.
And feel free to pop in and even ask a question to her. You can do that live. You have all the links. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I did get some unfortunate news though.
What happened?
Nadia is officially too old to play
a teenager now.
Yeah. She said she told me actually she had a rough stage where she was too young to play old and too old to play young, but now she's starting to get the roles again. But yeah, she broke it to me when I was in Brooklyn, and I was like, yeah, I kind of figured that, but we're gonna find a way to get her involved.
That's yeah. No, you know what? That rarely ever works. I'll tell you, that rarely ever works. I saw Sean Christensen do that with his Curfew adaptation to Before I Disappear.
Yeah.
Not the smoothest transition of trying to age someone up. And then what's next for you with Last and First Woman? Because you have this awesome 36-minute short. You're in no man's land, friend. What's next?
It really is. I'm so fortunate to have made a splash in the Ohio film scene. It's kind of led to my current full-time job, and it's led to more opportunities. So I'm working on the Regina King full-length feature in Cincinnati here shortly. I'm on set for something, which is just I'm so happy to be a part of. And then a lot of people have been telling me that I should use this to kick off my own production company. So we've started that. Cheapfilms.org is our production co. So it's kind of it's although 36 minutes is a Goliath of a short. I think just being very open about the process on the Ohio Film Networks, and then posting it here and there and handing it to other filmmakers has led people to see that there are things occurring in Ohio. So I'm just fortunate to have my career grow out of it, and I'm always writing. So who knows what the next personal project will be.
Well, whatever it is, we are super looking forward to seeing it wherever it goes. And, once a Pendancer, always a Pendancer. We're always going to be rooting for y'all, and we're going to be rooting for these projects and your future projects. I think you're all incredible storytellers, and we just really genuinely can't wait to see what you do next. Good luck with your feature, Alan.
Thanks,
Good
mate.
luck. Good luck with your feature, Dan. Good luck with your production company, Adnan. Any parting words? You know what? Actually, there was one question that I just, sorry to extend this a little bit longer, but I adore you three films so much. If there's one little note that you want to give to an audience member who's just watched your film, that you think maybe they might have missed that in my film. Most people miss that. Just clue them into that. Is there anything you wanna flag? We start with that then.
Yeah, sure. I think going into it, it's very easy on face value to see it as like a movie solely about curriculum and education. And I'll preface it with, I'm not a very religious person, but just go into it viewing it as a quasi-religious experience for the main character, and you see it through a different lens. How like there's I guess like the one hint I would like to say is like you have this person that no one else believes throughout the course of the movie.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then by the end she's kind of redeeming herself and kind of like wills it in a way. So I guess watch it through the lens of a religious experience would be one hint.
I'm watching it in my head right now, and you're right. That definitely that touches the spot there. Okay, Dan, something you want people to know about Cutter that you think they might not have gotten, or maybe they might have missed.
Well, I don't really know that, but part of the reason I really want to make Cutter was films that have moved me, and one thing that has been really rewarding is talking to audience members after. And one thing I do want to say is if this film can get you talking about if you are someone who's self-harmed and you need to talk about it, hopefully you can find someone. There's a big thing with whether or not we should put like at the end like a support line for it, but since it's such a horror movie, we decided not to do that. But still, the goal is to start conversations about it. So I want to thank everyone who's come up to me afterwards and talked to me about their issue, and just the fact that you can do that is just so heartwarming, but also tragic to me because it's happy and sad. So
I think you made the right decision by not putting the number up personally.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there. Alan, anything you want people to know about Wild Bow that you think they might not have gotten?
Oh, where do I start with that one? Maybe I'm sure some people get this already, but it just the idea of time working in cycles, potentially, and that the start of the film's potentially the end of the film, and the end of the film's potentially the start of the film. So everything being a cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, having heard these three answers, I really, really can't wait to watch your features. Okay. That's incredible. Thank you for thinking the way that you do. Thanks for creating the way that you do, and thanks for being with Pendance. I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Robert.
Rob.
It's our pleasure.
See you guys.
Have a good day. Have a good night.
Bye.